Good morning, good morning. So yesterday we spoke about how to get confidence and maintain confidence by actually just engaging with the task that you are looking to do and getting involved with it and staying involved with it as to deal with all that nagging doubt that creeps into just about everything that we do. Today I want to talk on a slightly different note, but it's still in the same theme. It's still about mindset, and it's still about building. In this case, sorry, it's about building momentum. Good morning, Angela. This is about building momentum in your life and in your career and in anything that you're doing. So, this is James Foster and Careers Matter. So what is momentum? Let's just talk about what we mean by momentum a bit. So a bit of a physics lesson, but I'm not a physician. I'm not a physicist, so don't hold me to every last thing I say here. But so if you have an object and you apply a force to it, it moves. If you're in vacuum of space where there's nothing else acting on it and you push or apply a force against an object, it will move and it will continue to move. That's momentum. It's that force that's gone into an object that gives it movement, if you like, in a particular direction, and until another force acts on it, it just continues in that way. On Earth, there's always other forces acting. So an object sat on the floor. There's a lot of friction and stiction. That's got to be overcome to start with. And when you're pushing it in a particular direction and it gains momentum, that's more and more energy is being pushed into it as you apply that force, and that energy builds into that object moving in a particular direction. But of course, there's we've already mentioned the word friction, but there are other forces that apply to that particular object that can take it off the course it's moving on. If you can imagine something traveling down a road, it will follow the path of that road simply because the forces acting on that object move it along the camber of the road. So it's actually centrifugal force and that's applied to it in that context. But so that's the image I want to portray, just to talk about what I mean by momentum, give you that idea. So whenever you look at a task, imagine that task as being that object that's just sat there doing nothing. It's not going anywhere. It's solid. It won't get going. I want to give you another analogy, which is along the same lines. But if you can imagine an aeroplane that's taking off, and it's sat at the end of the runway, that aeroplane can't fly. It's stuck at the end of the runway. There is nothing happening for that aeroplane. The pilot will then turn up the engines, and actually, it's still not going to fly. Those engines are pushing fuel and everything out. They're applying an enormous pushing force on that plane, but that plane's hardly moving. In fact, it's not moving to start with, and then as it starts to move, it starts to overcome the resistance to its moving. But there's no chance of that plane flying. It's crawling down the runway at a few miles an hour, but steadily as that massive amount of energy is pumped in, and it is a huge, colossal amount of energy that airplane is throwing out the back to push the plane to go forward, and it starts trundling off down the runway, gathering speed and building momentum, and eventually it's traveling at a certain speed that actually that plane now can fly. But the pilot takes it a little bit further because he wants to put a bit of reserve into it so that it's not just going to come crashing back down again. And I'm not going to talk about the physics of flight here, about the fact he uses ailerons or flaps and all sorts of things to increase the lift. But all of that's irrelevant to the model or to the idea. The point is there's been an enormous amount of energy shoved into this plane to get it to the point at which it can fly. and now it can only just fly. And so he lifts he lifts the nose of the plane so that the plane starts to lift. It's not quite as simple as that, and I'm not a pilot, so I'm not going to tell you exactly how it works, but the plane starts to lift. If the pilot were to pull back on the engines at that particular point, it would just go splat straight back down again, because it still needs that energy, that effort applied to get it going. And it's a massive amount. And so he keeps his engines fully blasting away whilst that plane lifts off, and until it's gained a certain speed and until it's reached a certain altitude. Actually, I'm not sure it's the altitude so much as the speed, but he gets to a certain speed, and he's got enough energy in that plane now that it's flying, and it is flying, and so he can start to ease off. But he doesn't ease off altogether. He starts to pull back a little bit. If you notice when you go off, there's a couple of times, actually round Heathrow, you get up to about 7,000 feet, and he goes and he actually takes a lot of power off because he's at a cruising altitude while he gets out of his traffic control zone, and then applies it again, and off he goes. But I'm not interested in the rest of that. The analogy is all that energy's gone into it. It's built up the power. That plane's now flying, but you're still maintaining a level of energy constantly going into it. Momentum. So that's that. I want you to think of that in everything that you do. So again, going back to that task, that job, whether that's getting a job, whether that's developing your career, whether that's moving your life forward, each task you can look at as an object that is not going anywhere and that is not doing anything, and that in order to get it to fly needs an enormous amount of effort and energy put into moving it in the direction it needs to go. And it is massive, the amount of energy that you have to put in. I can't talk about the exact amounts of energy that go in, but you know, if you've ever flown, how much noise those engines make when you're taking off, and you know how much they're pulled back when he's up and flying. So that all that energy is going into pushing that object, your object, whether so if that's moving into another job, etc., whether or whether it's moving your career up to the next level, whether it's building a business. This analogy really works very well for building a business. Getting those customers in, putting everything in place. The amount of energy that you have to expend to get anything where you want to get it. Excuse me a minute. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I quite often sneeze. I get a lot of irritation, so I'm prone to it, if you like. So you've got that energy. You have to put that energy. You have to apply that energy. Now I want to just move away from that image for a minute and talk about another thing that I was looking at the other day, which is on the same subject, and this is about where results come from, and it's connected. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it at the same time. So results come from that action. You apply that action, and you get the results. So all that effort and energy has gone in, and it will yield results. But here's the thing, that action only comes from the potential that you have, and we all have potential. So in order to move your career to the next level, you have to have the potential, and you have to take the action, and that will yield the results. So going back to this idea of momentum again, we've got to put in that action. We've got to, but in order to put that action in, we've got to understand the potential that we have, and act on that potential to create the movement that's going to bring out the results. But there's one other ingredient that goes into that. That is belief or certainty. That is the bit, that is the catalyst, if you like. Let's go back to the aeroplane analogy for a minute. If you're in a plane and you don't believe it can fly, you're never going to put the energy into those engines to get it to move along the ground in the first place. Because you're going to think, if I get up to that speed, I'm just going to crash. And therefore, what's the point of doing it? So if you don't believe in what you're doing, if you do not have the faith and the confidence to actually apply that energy, to apply the momentum, or to create the momentum in the first place, nothing ever happens. The aircraft one is a great one because fear of flying is a thing that a lot of people can appreciate and understand. So if you're there and you have fear, if you have doubt, if you have any sort of issue with the idea of flight, you won't take the necessary action that's actually going to engage with that plane getting off the ground in the first place. And even if you were to put that energy in and trundle it down the runway, you're going to push back and hold up the plane and not let it get off because you're afraid of lifting it off the ground in the first place. And if you're afraid of lifting it off the ground, that's going to kill the whole thing. So do you see what I'm trying to say here? It's all about having that, having the certainty in what you're doing. If you don't have that certainty, if you don't believe you can do it, then you don't apply the potential that you have to create and take that massive action that you need to create the results, and nothing happens. Look at this from a sales perspective for a minute, and I can relate this directly to something that I've been doing because it's absolutely true. I have a course that I'm selling, which I've called it, for want of a better term, finding hidden jobs. It's actually about how to find a job in the first place, and the course is pretty good. The fact the course is very good. It could always be better, no doubt, but in the essence, it does what it says on the tin. It tells people exactly how to find a job, but I've not been able to successfully sell it to a lot of people. I've sold it. There are people that have bought it. There are people that have benefited by it, and I have testimonials of that, but it's not selling. Now, the reason it's not selling, I have had to come honest with myself, is because I have not believed that I could sell it. I have not really put the effort into selling it that I really needed to. And because I haven't done that, it's sitting at the end of the runway, waiting for me to crank the engines up. Because I'm still waiting for the belief, if you like, and the confidence to actually take it down the runway and believe that it will actually fly. I've got it all set up. It's there. It's being marketed in a certain way, but I'm not applying everything that I need to do in that. Excuse me. I've got to. So apply that to your job search. Apply that principle to your career path generally. Apply that to building a business. It's all the same thing. If you don't have that belief, if you don't have the certainty that you can see it through, then those doubts, that uncertainty is another force that's acting on that object, but it's acting against the force that you need to put into it to move it and give it momentum and get it to a point where it will actually take off. And present you with the results that you're looking for. I think for the moment, that's probably as much as I want to cover today. There's a lot more to talk about, how to build that confidence, how to build that belief and certainty, and that's probably for another video, maybe one later this week. How to actually build the confidence, how to actually train yourself, because it is a matter of belief and training belief. in yourself. What I want to do at the moment is just paint that picture, give you that image, because it's a very powerful image of particularly the plane taking off, because that is exactly what is needed to build anything, a business or a career path or anything in your life that is going to give you direction and purpose and results. It takes effort, and that effort comes from belief and potential. So that's it for today. As always, I'd like to invite you to follow the link that's with this video and schedule a 20-minute call with me, so that we can talk to you about how to give you the momentum that maybe that will get your career moving in the right direction, how to give you that certainty and that belief that will enable you to take the massive action that you need, that's going to move you down the runway and get your career to really take off. The link is with this video. It always will be. Schedule a 20-minute call with me and we can start this process. This is James Foster and Careers Matter.